Good to see you. Welcome to somebody I haven't seen before here. Two people. Every time before there's a Dharma talk, we chant this brief 4-line introduction. And how long is hundreds and thousands of millions of ages? Every aspect of what we're chanting just highlights the preciousness of the Dharma and how important it is to realize it for ourselves, no matter how long it takes. And some days feel like they take 100,000 million years. And sometimes the day is over in a flash. So everything that we say in Dharma teachings are spurs, they're inspirations, they're descriptions of experience, the quality of experience. When we say this is rarely encountered, it is rarely encountered to come across and approach to this consciousness that we have that encourages us to be aware of it and how we use it, rather than falling into automatic mind behaviors that trap us all. So that's what the encouragement is in this particular chant. So any Dharma talk that follows is talking about one aspect of the teachings that we approach with the same attitude, which is, okay, how is this something that I can use to clear my ability to see what the true situation is, what makes up this experience of being a human being, this particular human being. So Tuesday nights, we're talking about precepts. And this last Tuesday night, the precept was the second of the 10 grave precepts, which is do not steal. And we who live in a world of desire and clinging, in a society that values what is mine above all else, are challenged to look really carefully into a precept about stealing. In a way, it's not, again, I say this every week, it's not thou shalt not steal. That's not the attitude. The attitude is, what is our own attitude toward what seems separate from us, what seems missing that we have to get for ourselves, and how do we go about that? How do we understand that? In the world of samsara, the commonly agreed upon measure of a person's worth in life is how well have we lived the dream. We call it the American dream, which has also been adopted in a lot of other parts of the world by now. And it's a shared dream of ceaseless consumption and material possessions. And this is indeed a dream, which easily disappears when conditions change, just like our sleeping dreams. A dream of gaining and holding on, which is hemmed all around by a fear of losing what we've gained, because that's the way it goes. We get, we gain, and we lose. In fact, we all know what it's like to lose something we value, what we want, what we dream of having, to lose somebody we love, to lose a fantasy about ourselves. And so in considering this precept about do not steal and holding no thought of gaining and losing, it's really useful to think about all of the anxiety that attaches to gaining and losing in our lives. when you look at your anxieties, and I imagine everybody here has them, anybody here not have any anxieties? There's always an ingredient of gaining or losing, no matter what the particular issues are. So this precept, I undertake not to steal, but to refrain from taking what is not offered. So we always have these secondary phrases that come along with do not steal. And this ethical admonition seems pretty straightforward. Living into it, upholding the precept, if we're really paying attention, isn't always so straightforward. What is given and what is not given, what is not freely offered, what is not freely offered to me to be used and enjoyed as I will. We contemplate this for ourselves. We contemplate the meaning of this really. So, you know, what this question lurks in a lot of different situations about material things and also just about social behaviors, like breaking into a conversation when you're not invited. You know, that would be an example of where this precept may be applied. Or eavesdropping is another one. So it seems to me if we're intending not to steal or take what's not offered, we need to be clear about what offering is. How do I offer? What's the manner of my offering? How do I offer what I have? When do I offer what I have? And another question we could ask here is there a feeling that is unique to offering rather than giving? To offering rather than taking? Yeah, so we can really get into all of the subtleties, because this practice really is about discovering that our minds are infinitely subtle. And we become much more flexible and gracious when we really understand the subtleties of things. We are not living an either-or life, despite what the media might tell us. It's a lot more complicated than either-or, right? So when we're offering something, to me, so as I was thinking about this, what do I mean when I say, or how does it feel to be offering something rather than giving? And for me, there's a little bit less self-forward, offering rather than giving. It's a more connecting manner in the offering. Whereas giving, sometimes we give in response to a request. Offering is not always just in response to a request. So these subtleties really follow the particulars of the situation that we're in. We could call this part of the art of living, the art of being a human being, a skillful, caring human being, awake and alert. So being sensitive to the situation we're in requires paying attention. We also bear witness to all the offerings that we're receiving. Do you? You know, I may not notice everything that I'm receiving. And it's a lovely day when I take this up as a very particular practice that I'm really going to focus on in a day. And actually, I could say that there's nothing that I am not receiving in a day. There's a simple gesture that we can practice as part of the precept of receiving and offering, which is when somebody gives us something, we receive it with both hands. And it only occurs to us to do that when we're paying attention. And isn't there something about someone receiving something that we've offered to them with both hands? Is a very distinct experience of being cared for and appreciated. And it completes the gift. So it's a connecting gesture. So offering is more connecting than just giving. Although no problem with giving, but and there's an appreciation in offering that goes with it. But when we steal something, it's disconnecting. And it's often in secret and creates the conditions for trouble of various kinds, beginning with a sense of dis-ease or troubled conscience. And actually this would be true whenever we forget about practicing any of the precepts. There's a disconnection. The precepts are all about behaving in relation to the interdependent being. Right? So if we're stealing something, it certainly increases the distance in a relationship. You may have had that experience. When I was a kid, there was a neighborhood girl who used to come over, and at one point I realized that she had, because I guess I'd shown her where I had saved my allowance in my second drawer of my dresser, and it was gone, and she had stolen it. But I didn't notice it for a week or two, but I did notice she suddenly was really different with me. And it was very, very disturbing, very disturbing. So I hadn't thought about it until I was thinking about this today, and I remembered, oh yeah, I remember that. And so when we steal, it sets off an increasing sense of vigilance and lack of safety in our own life. All the work and distraction of maintaining what is hidden is added to our load, to our burden. Stealing points life in a very different direction. So, and then we practice with taking. What's the difference between receiving and taking? What does stealing feel like? What's the difference between how it feels to take and how it feels to steal? There's an element of grace involved when we receive and when we offer. Receiving feels graceful. It takes time. Offering takes time. There's a more leisurely feeling about offering, more leisurely about receiving. So one of the ways that all of this has been applied is we used to call the Precepts Ceremony taking the precepts, but we changed it to receiving the precepts, just so that we didn't kind of disregard some of the wisdom that comes when we work with this precept. So now we receive the precepts which have been handed down to us through many, many, many generations of practitioners. It's a part of our inheritance in the Buddha lineage. So as you work with this precept, what else do you notice about it? Because we each receive it and we bring it into our lives and we see how it helps us, how it coaches us and directs us. Anxieties about gain and loss can dominate our concerns, oscillating between these two desires to get something that we think we didn't have, and then the fear of losing it once we get it. And this deprives us of what Wordsworth called a central peace subsisting at the heart of endless agitation. So that's just a lovely way to describe this. A central peace subsisting at the heart of endless agitation. This really describes the practice of Zen and the liberation that we can taste when we are really present. All of that endless agitation is for a moment just released, we are released from it. So the precept, all of them help us find this central peace that we're capable of knowing for ourselves. A peace that doesn't have to be gained because it's never been anywhere but right here and available. It's always there. It is our mine of joy and delight and ease. And the peace comes naturally when we follow a path of integrity. When we know who we are, when we tell the truth, we say what we mean what we say, and we do what we say we're going to do. There's a real alignment. Really, Rev Anderson, in his book about precepts, titled the book Being Upright. And that's really the feeling of, you feel self-respecting, you can trust yourself to be honest, and you can meet people with a whole heart. When we have this commitment to live from a generous heart rather than from an avaricious mind. What's that phrase that for a while it was painted all over the public spaces, born, live, consume, die. It's really, it's true, but it's really much more than that, potentially. But we all have an avaricious aspect. I do. And it's important to recognize that energy in us when it's there. I can easily be persuaded that there's some beautiful thing that I need, right? And that's the avaricious one who's looking at that catalog or whatever. Actually, what we need is very, very good. I need it's very good. So this precept, a disciple of Buddha does not take what is not given, but rather cultivates and encourages generosity. That's how the Buddha stated this. And we tend to evaluate so much of our experience in terms of gaining and losing, winning and losing, attaining and falling short. We tend to bring the same mind to our practice. Shunryu Suzuki advises us not to practice with a gaining idea. And I find that a very useful teaching, not to practice with a gaining idea, because anytime I notice when I am suffering on the cushion, it's because I've forgotten, and I have some gaining idea about a state that I should be attaining, or a sensation I should be having, or there's a should involved in the gaining idea. And we know it and say, oh, okay, that's a mistaken belief. It's gaining idea. Sawaki Roshi says, Zazen is good for nothing. And he's reminding us of the same thing. It's not about getting something. Gaining something that we don't have is not the view of practice. Cultivating all the seeds for clarity and ease that are already here, naturally part of the heart mind that we come into as a conscious human being. We need to merely attend to awareness and being aware and being present. This gaining idea so subtly slips in when we are least expecting it. It lurks. And how this translates into our experience, and you may have even noticed it during Zazen tonight. You know, any discomfort, any feeling of anxiety that comes up because you don't know what you're really supposed to be doing. Have any of you had that experience? You're sitting there meditating, you think, well, what am I supposed to be doing? Had that for years. What am I supposed to be doing? Nothing. Try doing nothing. That's really challenging. Doing nothing, but simply being. It's like when we say the practice of Zazen is sitting, being a human being, sitting and breathing. And it can take a long time, hundreds and millions and thousands of years, to learn how to just breathe with awareness instead of fiddling with the breath. Because Zazen is not a breathing exercise. I mean, in yogic practices, there are various breathing ways of approaching the breath. But Zazen is simply the natural flow of breath, whatever it is. And it's often different. And it's often different at the beginning of a sit and, then throughout. And sometimes the breath just about completely goes away. So you're not missing anything in Zazen. Zazen is kind of infinite. So we're faced with this paradox in practice of not seeking, while also not knowing what we're doing. Not seeking and being in don't know mind. And yet something compels us to persist in the practice, even long before we have a glint of clarity about this practice. A glint of something we might say if somebody says, well, what's that about anyway? There's a moment in a practice, in a life of practice, where, in my experience, I began to know what I could say to somebody, but for a long time, I didn't tell anybody about practice because I had no idea what I would say, what it is, because I didn't know. And yet here we are. You don't have to know. So everything comes with persistence. And with persistence, we discover patience when we didn't know we had any source for patience. And all of the teachings, no matter what it is, go together. So we practice patience, we practice not knowing, we practice curiosity and investigation and generosity, while we work with the koan of holding no thought of gain. It's all going on at the same time. Without getting involved with thoughts of gain and loss, there are elements of this precept: not stealing, not taking what is not offered. So most of us don't steal. We don't commit grand larceny or shoplift. Do you acknowledge when you're given too much change at the store? Aiken Roshi, my first teacher, considered carelessness with precious things as a kind of stealing, as well as using time foolishly, including wasting time in Zazen by spacing out and indulging in fantasies. So that's interesting. Noticing that we're doing that is not, the response is not to criticize ourselves or to take it as proof that we are not worthy, but to take it in the spirit of, oh, that's interesting, look at that. Here I am sitting here and my mind is just 50 miles away, My mind was in China.
Yeah.
My mind was in New York. Thich Nhat Hanh writes the precept this way. He says, possess nothing that should belong to others, respect the property of others, but prevent others from enriching themselves from human suffering or the suffering of other beings. So that's all part of his teaching about this precept. Bullying is another kind of breaking of the precept. It's another kind of stealing someone else's power or someone's dignity or self-respect. So we sweep in the speech precepts, right? Thich Nhat Hanh's view points out that human rights and the rights of all living beings are also an expression of this precept, are also a concern of this precept. We can look at the environmental situation in terms of this precept. What is freely offered to us? What is being stolen to benefit a few? Oil, or clear water, or clean air, or a dark night. The darkness that is stolen when there are streetlights put up in a new development. And how does that affect what lives? What lives are affected by that? Anything that can be depleted and used up that results in harm to ourselves or other creatures, when we know the truth of biological interdependence, a whole economic system that ignores what is stealing and what is freely offered. So we're all caught up in this. It's very complex. Is massive consumption stealing? So we also, in working with the precept, look at our own consumption habits. Bodhidharma states a non-dual view about this precept. And he said, self-nature is subtle and mysterious in the realm of the unattainable Dharma. Unattainable because it's all around us and everything. It's already here. In the realm of the unattainable Dharma, holding no thought of attainment is the precept of not stealing. Attaining what is our true nature isn't necessary. There is no separation from it, nothing other to be gained. So that's another aspect of this, which brings us back to Suzuki Roshi. When he talks about not practicing with a gaining idea, not to be attached to something. Not to be attached to something is to be aware of its absolute value. So when we live with a mind of the value of every aspect of our life, there is nothing missing. It's a life lived in a complete, it's always complete. Not to be attached to something is to be aware of its absolute value. We're not separate from the things of the world, and there's nothing missing in this completeness. When we haven't yet realized this for ourselves, the precepts help us behave the way we do when we have realized this for ourselves. And we call this practicing the precepts. That's why we don't have to, a lot of people say, well, I want to take the precepts, but I'm still so far short of keeping them. And that's the point of receiving precepts, is it just helps us continue to work on them. They are a work in progress, just like our whole life is. So Category Roshi said, all beings that exist in this world manifest themselves as the practice of giving. by just being whoever they are. It just, how sweet, how kind. We all take that to heart. None of us are exempted from that. So surely this encourages us to be at peace as we practice being whoever we are and refrain from taking what is not ours, appreciating what is, and valuing the life of all, so that we can practice giving ourselves completely every moment. And thank you so much for listening.